Okay, so continuing in the series, but it's not a hemshech to the inyanim that we discussed in last year. It's just in the subject, in the halachas of Maacholei Akkum. So we discussed pas, bishul, and sheichar. Obviously, not the whole entire, not every single thing that's brought down in those simanim, but some common issues. And I want to move on a little bit to a few issues that appear a little bit later on in Hilchos Maacholei Akkum. So we're going to start with the issues of chalav Akkum. I want to explain, really, if you're familiar with the strong echo. Make it less. All right. Maybe you can make it a bit lower. Make it a... Yeah, everyone could hear, right? And to me, the echo makes a little it's hard for me to consider. Okay. Now, as long as everyone could hear it, say it, yeah? Okay. So everybody's familiar with something called chalav stam. It's not actually a real halachic hagdara. It's just a name that was given to be able to everybody should know what they're talking about. So there's a din of chalav Akkum versus chalav Yisrael, which means that there's a gzeres chachamim that whenever a goy gets the milk, so there has to be a yid watching. Otherwise, it's considered chalav Akkum and it's also midrabanan. What was the concern? The concern was that there might be some chalav tamei, Shema'ir chalav tamei, that the guy mixed in a little bit of chalav tamei. Not that the actual milk that you're buying is actually chalav tamei, that it's camel milk or something, because then you'll be able to tell the difference. It looks a little bit different. It's a different shade of white, but that it's mostly chalav, whatever it is from a cow, and maybe he mixed in a little bit of chalav tamei. So now, it's important to understand every product, every item, every product that has a hechsher, that needs a hechsher. Why does it need a hechsher? Because there's a concern that there might be some non-kosher ingredient or something like that. So what's it any different? Every product needs a hechsher, unless it's something so simple that it's just obvious that there's no concern whatsoever. So water, you don't need a hechsher. If there's flavorings in there, if there's stuff in there, so there's a concern. So what was the Chacham made up a special gzeira, and why is that different, and how is that different than everything else? So the answer is, in the Kudas Inyan, is that everything else, a regular product that the Chacham didn't make a specific special gzeira for that thing. So as long as there's no reasonable suspicion that there's a non-kosher ingredient there, yeah, of course it's possible. It's a chash rachuk that somehow he would have mixed in, he could have taken it, but there's no reason to suspect that happened. Sometimes there's reason to suspect. The treifa ingredient could be much more cheaper, much more available. So the guy has like a motivation to try to stick in. So then you have to be careful. You have to watch, and depending on how serious it is, so you'll have to have a mashgiach there, and how often he has to come and be there, etc. So that's for a regular product, depending on what type of concern you're dealing with. So that's what the hashgacha requires. Usually, there doesn't have to be a mashgiach there the whole time. That there's no din that the yid has to be watching. You have to make it into a situation where you're comfortable that the guy's not going to mix in the non-kosher ingredients. So usually, what's called a yotze b'nichnas. So you come and you make, you come in on occasion, you make a spot check, and if there's no real motivation for the guy to try to trick you, whatever it is, so then it's good enough. You just come once in a while. That's usually a regular product. So the Chachamim said, no, but here we made a special gzeira of chalav Yisrael, that we want that a yid has to be there the whole time. And therefore, even for dealing with a chash rachok, that it's not that we're dealing with that the non-kosher milk is cheaper and it's more common, and therefore there's a real serious chashash that he's going to mix it in. Even if it's a little bit far-fetched, the Chachamim made a gzeira for that situation. The Maacholei that it's far-fetched, they still wanted it to be. And it's not, it's important also to remember that chalav Akkum is a problem even if there's no chalav tamei mixed in. In other words, you're still eating, if somebody were to drink chalav Akkum, and there happened to be that there's no chalav tamei mixed in, he's still eating a davar tamei. He's still eating a davar aser, and it's still negatively going to affect it. Like it says that chalav nachri is metamtem es alev, the Broner Shulchan Aruch regarding Chalav Nachris, so that's mamish not an Isser, just a nurse from a non-Jewish woman is Metamtem Es Halei. So we're talking already non-code the Chalav Akkum. So that's also important to realize that it was Chachamim were geyser, and therefore it's aser. Okay, and they were geyser for a Chash Rachok. That was the whole, and that everybody agrees with. That's not even look like a Sapaskin, that the purpose of the Gzeira was for a Chash Rachok. That even if there's no Davar Tameh, even if there's no non-kosher animal, a type of animal that gives milk, like a camel or whatever it is, the Baiskim assume that like a cat or a dog, that's a kind of milk that humans don't drink bechlau. That's not even what we're talking about. When we talk about a Davar Tameh, a non-kosher animal that gives milk is like a gamal or something like that. So even if you don't have it in the Eider, the whole farm, there's no camel over there or some other, a pig or whatever other kind of animal that gives milk, still there has to be a Yid watching, otherwise the milk is also midarabah. That not everybody agrees with. There is a difference in halacha if there is a davar tamei in the Eider or not, as to what kind of hashgacha is required. And then the main point is, there's more pratim, but the Nekudas Inyan, it's enough for us to understand the hemshech of the shir, is that if there's a davar tamei in the Eider, so then taka, the guy has to be watching. Whereas, because at any moment you turn around, so he could be, whereas if, or he doesn't have to be watching the whole time, he has to be able to see inside the actual chalib. He has to be able to see that let's say if he stands up and he looks, he'd be able to actually see what's going on. Whereas if there's no davar tamei in the Eider, so then he could be sitting outside. The main thing is he has to see that the guy didn't leave, because from inside he anyway can't get any chalav tamei. So the only way he can get chalav tamei is if he leaves. So where does he have to be sitting? He has to be sitting outside that he could be able to see if the guy leaves. There's a difference there. But b'chlalos, that's the takana, the gzeira was that even if it's a chash rachok, there has to be a yid there. That's where it's different than any other product that where we have to have some sort of hashgacha to make sure that no non-kosher ingredients mixed in. So we have an important yisodistic maacholei in the paskin of what's the geder of this gzeira. Because when the chachamim made the gzeira with the reason of a concern that there's going to be non-kosher milk mixed in. So the question is, when this concern, not that it's a chash rachok, but it's legamri out of the question. It's completely, not that it's physically impossible, but almost like that. Like it's completely out of the question. For example, that there's no davar tamei in the whole city. And maybe not like we have nowadays where we truck in from one side of America to the other. I'm talking, let's say in the olden days where if the milk would go from that to that, it would already get spoiled. So if there's no chalav tamei if there's no chalav tamei existing in the whole city, so then it's come out impossible that there should be chalav tamei. So here there was a machlokes already. If the chachamim, so the reason is not applicable in this case, more than a chash rachok. Chash rachok, it definitely applies, but here it's more than a chash rachok. And the reason's not applicable. So the question is, was the gzeira even in a case where the reason's not applicable? We find in the gzeiras of the chachamim different types of gzeiras. You have even in these halachas that we're discussing, you have lamashal dinim of gilui. Right? The Gemara talks a lot about it, about not eating something that was left uncovered. And the chash is that a venomous snake or something like that would drink from it and leave some of the venom inside. And then it's dangerous if you drink it. So as you leave it uncovered, mamash, for a minute or two, if a snake, let's say, be hiding under the table, not that the gilui that we're familiar with is a different din gilui, that only applies to wine for kiddush, that it's not considered mechubadik if the wine was left over for a certain amount of time. It doesn't say clearly how much that time is, for a significant amount of time, so it loses its chashivus, and now it's a din in chashivus. It's no longer appropriate to make kiddush on such wine. That's nothing to do with gilui, what we're talking about. Gilui, we're talking about is pasha the danger, it's a chash sakana of a venomous creature drinking from it and leaving over some of the venom. So it says in Shulchan Aruch, so there's all prati dinim. If there's cats that live in the neighborhood, and there's less of a chashash because they chase away the snakes, and there's so much dinim. And it says in Shulchan Aruch, ma'achshar she'ein nachashim mitzuyim beineinu, and in these places, I guess the Eretz Yisrael, in the times of the Machaber, 500 years ago, even then already was not Nechashim Mitzuyim Beineinu. So then these dinim don't apply, and we don't have to worry about it. It doesn't mean that the din falls away. If you're living in some, I don't know, Western Australia, you do have to worry about it. So then, yeah, you'll worry about it. But in a place where you don't have to worry about venomous snakes, so the din is basically, there's no din gili. You could leave. I could turn around for half an hour. I could come back. I could drink my water. I could drink my drink. Yeah, so the reason it's not applicable, there's no gzeira. There's no, that the kon is not. Then you have other kinds of gzeiros, which clearly in the paiskim halacha, it's even if the reason doesn't apply. So, for example, there's a din of gvinas akkum, different than chalav akkum. Chalav akkum is the milk that you're buying from the guy, so you'd have to watch it to make sure that the guy didn't mix in any non-kosher milk. Gvinas akkum is that even if you have chalav Yisrael, right? If the guy uses even chalav Yisrael milk and he turns it into cheese, so that's called gvinas akkum. That's also asim midarabanan. Why was that? Also, there's a bunch of reasons given in the Gemara. The one that's ungenommen, but halacha mostly, is that you did the hamada, the kevas nevela. In order to make the cheese, you have to, the process called hamada. You take in something which is called a rennet, piece of the stomach, piece of the keva, and you put it in to the milk, and that triggers that process that the milk becomes hardened and then it turns into cheese. But the hard cheeses use such a process of hamada. So since, even though that's a very small amount, but there's a special din, that's the classic reason that's born in Shulchan Aruch. There are other reasons that we shine him why that would be a problem, even though generally you'll have shishim against that little piece of keva. So the concern was that they used a non-kosher stomach to make the cheese, and that has a whole effect on the cheese. That means that the cheese turned into cheese because of this davar aser. So therefore, you see the effect of the davar aser in the product, in the cheese, and therefore it's aser. That was the reason why the Chacham instituted this. Over there, it says beferish that even in Shulchan Aruch, that even if it's a country, that the entire country, the way they do the hamada, the way they make the cheese, is they're maimed basavim. They use artificial rennet. They don't use animal-based rennet. They use some other. I don't know the technical term, but vegetarian-based, some artificial kind of rennet. They don't use it, so there's no concern. At least this main reason that's accepted by the paskim Shulchan Aruch is not applicable. It says beferish afal pikein. There's still a din of klinas akum, and if a yid, it's a Maacholei between the shach and the ramah, if a yid has to put in the rennet, or he just has to watch when the guy puts in the rennet. The ikar halach is like the ramah, that it's out there paskins like this. That a yid just has to watch when the guy puts in the rennet, and that's considered gvinas Yisrael. So over there you have a gzeira that's even clearly when the reason is not applicable. So the din still applies. So if we have a machlekes in the paskim, which category does chalav akum fit into? So the Pri Chadash learns that it falls into the first category. If the reason is not applicable, it means it's not even a chash rachak. It's like gamli mufrach. That it could be chalav tamei, there could be chalav tamei mixed in. There's no chalav tamei in the whole ear. So then you don't have to have a yid watching. There's no need in such a case. It's not considered chalav akum. It's kasher. Chacham never made exer in such a kind of situation. And other achronim, it's called, usually it's referred to the Chsitcha Sam Sefer. There are other achronim who learn very similar, and we'll soon see the nuanced chiluk between them. Is that no? This is called a davar shebeminyan. That means that it applies even. It's a kind of exeris chacham that apply even when the reason is not applicable. So therefore, even though it's mamish impossible for it to be chalav tamei mixed in, still, if a yid's not watching, this milk is aser midarabanan. It has all the negative effects of chalav akum, whatever it is. Okay. So by Europe, it appears that. At least amongst Ashkenazim, it was angenommen, not like the Pri Chadash. Pri Chadash is more of a Sephardi Pesach. It was angenommen more like the Chsam Sefer and the other achronim that say along those lines that it's davar shebeminyan, and therefore the always was required, even in situations where it was completely, not shayches that there should be any chalav tamei. Still, they required that a yid should be there, the shasa chalila. So what's this whole famous concept of chalav stam? Der Moshe, he wasn't the only one who held like this, but it was made famous. So he tied it like this: even lididan means Ashkenazim b'chlalos, that we paskin that is a davar shebeminyan. So therefore, even in kind of situations where there's mamish no chalav tamei around, it's still required. It's still going to be considered chalav akum if there's not a yid there by the milking. So he was machadish that there could be considered that a yid watching, even if there's physically no yid present at the thing, it still has the halachic hagdara of a yid watching, and therefore it's chalav Yisrael, even according to the stricter way of learning that it's a davar shebeminyan, that it's a light plug. How's that? So he explains that we find, let's say like this, in other areas of halacha, that sometimes yediyah brura, if you have actual knowledge, 100% knowledge, so that is equivalent mamish to edus, like a non-sahadi, l'mashal, yeah. So you have like a situation with circumstantial evidence. The Edom didn't actually see what happened, right? So, but it's circumstantial. So they saw, you have like Reuven, he's chasing after Shimon, screaming at him, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna buy, what do you do to me? And he's clearly agitated, he's clearly looking to hurt him, and he's chasing after him. And then Shimon comes back and he's all bloodied and he's all injured, this and that. Or maybe worse, maybe he was killed. So that is circumstantial evidence. That's a umdana, right? We know that Reuven was upset at Shimon, he threatened to hurt him, but no one actually saw that he did it. And we can't say that we have a yediyah brura, we know 100% that he did it. It could be someone else came in and did it. It could be they were struggling and he himself, while they were struggling, the knife, he stabbed himself somehow. So that is not yediyah. For edus, for dinei nefashis, that's certainly not counted, but dinei mamanis, question. Then you have like yediyah, like the situation where it is actual. Somebody, Edom, came out of a building without any windows. They were just in there. They knew that it was completely empty and there's no windows. And then they come out and they see Reuven chasing Shimon into this place. And Shimon and Reuven comes out with a bloody knife, and Shimon is in there and he has a stab wound in between his shoulder blades. So therefore it couldn't have been that they were struggling or whatever it is, or something along those lines, that it's impossible. It had to be, it's a yediyah brura, 100% knowledge. This, according to, this is Zichar works for Mamonis, means if he was only injured, he would definitely have to pay. That's considered edus. And even for Nefashis, there's a discussion. There's some Rishonim that hold that that's considered mamish edus. And therefore, in even situations where you require mamish edus, there's discussions if this works. Like the mashal, or even another mashal, let's say. You come to a chasana, the Edom are called up. Let's say everybody else is a puzzle edus, whatever, they're all family members, right? There's two kosher Edom at the chuppah, and they're watching, and the chassan's holding the ring, the kala sticks out her finger, and I don't know, the guy, the aide, I don't know, he turns around for something, gets something in his eye, and he tries to get it out, he turns back around, and the ring is already on, right? He didn't see. So that's circumstantial. There was a wedding invitation, we know that she was the kala, and he was the chassan, and they agreed that they're going to get married. I'd be willing to bet, a lot of money that it was actually him who gave the ring. But do I know for a fact? So it's possible somebody else came with the ring. It's possible. But let's say I sneezed for 2 seconds, closed my eyes for 2 seconds, I sneezed. And it's physically impossible that the ring could have been. The guy had to be holding the ring on, mamish by the finger for it to be, right? So that's the idea. So some say that even like by Kedushin, where it's mamish, edikiyum, there are some shittas that hold that works. It's obviously not the place to go into that halacha l'maisa if such a story happens. Obviously not. I myself don't even know. I know it's a machlekes in the Paiskim and machlekes in the Rishonim, but there's such a concept, yeah. So Moshe Tain is that we have over here yediyah brura, right? What's the yediyah? The yediyah is that you have a company, and if they mix in, and according to the Department of Agriculture, you're not allowed to mix in other kind of milk. You're not even allowed to have it in the whole Eder. You're not allowed to have other kinds of animals besides cows or whatever it is, and goats, right? So, and if they have it, and there's inspectors that go with Zman to check it out. And if they have it, they're going to be fined and closed down. And therefore, it's not just highly unlikely. So, be highly unlikely is that it's already established that it still requires. Moshe claims that with mamish reach the level of yediyah, and if it's yediyah, so then it's mamish edus, and therefore it actually fits the criteria of a yid watch. What do you see? What's a smach to such a concept? Because we already mentioned this before. Does the mashgiach, when it says Yisrael Ra'ehu, does he actually have to watch when they're milking? No. He could be sitting over there as long as if he stands up, he could see. So then that's good enough. Doesn't actually have to see, right? So you see there clearly he doesn't have to see. Or in the case when there's no davar tameh be'eder, he doesn't even have to see in. Me'ikar adin, I mean, the Shulchan Aruch paskins like that. Other person can disagree, say it's like some sort of gzeira, but me'ikar adin, he can stand on the outside and he doesn't see anything, right? So it doesn't matter that you didn't see. If it reaches and that's what he learns pshat in what this means, what this halacha is teaching us, that you didn't see, but it's yediyah, and if it's yediyah, then it's still considered to be chalav Yisrael. So that's how he wants to. So he doesn't learn. There's a lot of misconceptions. It's not that he's being soymech on the pri chadash that sits, there's no davar tameh, and therefore it's not necessary to have a yid in such a situation, a yid watching. It's not like that. We assume la halacha most likely that it's a light klub, that it's a davar shel minyan. But this, he wants the time, is considered a yediyah, and that's enough. You don't have to actually be physically watching. So now, not everybody agrees to Moshe's Chiddush. Okay, in fact, I would most likely say that most of the place can disagree. There are others who also held like this, but majority of the place can disagree. And so those that are so the question, there's no such thing as chalav stam, right? Either it's chalav Yisrael and it's kosher, or it's chalav Akkum and it's straight, right? So they gave a name, I don't know if but Moshe referred to it as chalav of the companies. I mean, he was talking about these kind of companies where there's this type of a mirsas, and therefore there's yediyah on our part, anan sahadi, that there's no non-kosher milk there. So in order that we should know what kind of milk we're talking about, right? So it's not fair to give a hechsher. So let's say a company is soymech on this heter, right? So it's unfair to give a hechsher because there's many people that are not soymech on this, right? So they gave it kind of this like new category. They call it chalav stam, which means that it's not classic chalav nachri in the sense that everybody would agree that it's chalav Akkum because it's from the guy's backyard, and therefore there's no, Department of Agriculture, there's no yediyah on our part, right? And it's not chalav Yisrael in the classic sense where there's a guy sitting there, and even if he's not actually physically watching, but he's able to see, which that's clearly considered sufficient. Whether the pshat is that is what the chachamim required, or whether that's a proof that yediyah is enough. Okay, but that's not a case which says in the Gemara, which says in Shulchan Aruch, that's enough, right? It's a new case. So they called it this chalav stam, and those that are soymech on the heter use it, and those that are not soymech on the heter consider it to be chalav nachri. So obviously we all know that we're not. I think it's all of das chassidim that aren't really soymech on this kula, which means we don't. And so in other words, and it's only going to be chalav Yisrael. Let's say if it's an OUD product or an OKD, whatever it is, it's not going to be chalav Yisrael in the classic sense that it was there. That means that they're being soymech. It doesn't say the words chalav Yisrael on the bottom, whether it's in English or in Hebrew, but it doesn't say those words. So what that means is that they're being soymech on this heter, and those that are not soymech on it shouldn't use this product. Okay, if it is chalav Yisrael in the classic sense, then they're going to write those words. So, but it is also important to clarify a few points further, and we'll do, I guess, the main point, which is the equipment, how we approach the equipment. So it's a din that chalav Akkum asers kelim, meaning if someone cooks chalav Akkum, you will have to kasher those kelim. It's not like pas Akkum, which we said doesn't aser kelim, and bishul Akkum was all Maacholei, right? And therefore would make in certain situations, and how we can kasher something, etc. By chalav, it's a chashash that there's something non-kosher there, and therefore it's a davar Barber. It's a clear din that it asers kelim. So the question is, now those that rely on this heter, so they'll eat the food even, they hold this kosher, right? Those that do not rely on this heter, so how do we approach the kelim? So here already, actually, you break it down further, there's actually different approaches. I'll explain to you what the Indian is. There are those that hold that, in other words, we're not saying on this hat rule. In other words, we don't agree with it. We hold that this is the Chachamim required. First, let me explain at least the Kitzur Nimritz. What's potentially the problem with this svara? But there's two problems. One is that the premise that that's considered yediyah is questionable, meaning it never happened before that a company went against the regulations and got fined or whatever it is. They do it constantly. They're always testing the system, right? So this idea that this is mamish yediyah, it's not exactly the case that we described before, with the guy chasing and it wasn't a window and you just came out and you saw there was nothing and the injury was mamish in a place where it couldn't have been self-inflicted. It's not yediyah on that level. That's obvious, right? So that's one problem, okay, potentially with that. One reason why not everybody's comfortable with it. The other reason is that who says that that's what it means? In other words, it could be that even the din that a person could be, that the mashgiach could be sitting outside, and it's enough that when he stands up, he could see, but maybe that's what the Chachamim instituted, that's enough of Yisrael Re'ehu, that he should be able to see. Right? He's there, he's present, and he's able to see. That's what it means, Yisrael Re'ehu. From there, you're going to extrapolate, and you're going to extend that, and you're going to tie it that because you have Yediyah, maybe Yediyah in this case doesn't work, right? Maybe in this case, the Kanas Chachamim was that he has to be present. How do you know, right? So Memela, it's questionable. So that's why a lot of places just don't hold of it. And hold that it's mamish not considered kosher. So going back to the Kalim, so basically it's like this. There are those that are not saying mecharol, follow the other place. Hold this is considered called Akkum. So they will require, if you by mistake buy such an OUD product, you'll have to cash your keli. When you cook it in a house and you realize, wow, with OUD, you thought it was called Yisrael, it was a mistake, you'll cash your keli, right? If you hold it's not kosher. But then there's a group of people that buy Chalav Yisrael, they're machmir for Chalav Yisrael, but it's only b'toras chumra. In other words, me'ikar adin, they hold their, Moshe, you can be saimach on it. I mean, he has a story, hold that it's mutar me'ikar adin. Rafal begain, also chumra, it's better to buy Chalav Yisrael. In fact, even Moshe himself wrote numerous times that about nefesh should be machmir, and you should only be mekel b'shas hadchak, and even if it costs more, you should pay more. Moshe was, it seemed even Moshe was pushing not to have to rely on it only in extreme circumstances, right? So definitely you're going to have people that try to buy Chalav. So, but it's b'toras chumra. So if it's b'toras chumra, so then it won't necessarily affect the Canaan, okay? Somebody only eats levavish shechita, right? So he goes into the restaurant and he asks the mashgiach, so what can I order today on menu? Like, what do you have today? Today the steak is levavish shechita. So you go to the steak, you can't order the chicken, right? Or vice versa, right? On the same exact grill, right? It will be not kosher, right? Then you wouldn't be able to order it. The answer is you're not saying it's not kosher, not b'shalom. It's a hiddur, it's a homer that you keep. So that doesn't affect the kelim, right? That's usually the cloud. There's a whole raid when it comes to gebraks and all like that. It's a share for itself. But the chalalis, there is a strong argument that b'chlal, that's how it works. That when something's just b'teres chumra, it doesn't affect the case. So therefore, such a yid will buy a mistake, he won't kasher his keli. And based on that, if you have a product that says OUDE or dairy equipment, so that means that there's not actually dairy ingredients in it. It's just made in the keli that weren't kasher at first. So it's the chala of stam keli, right? So they won't be makbid, just like we're not makbid if you go to the restaurant and it's made on the same grill as a. So where do we find ourselves on this? I think it's pretty safe to say that we assume we treat it like it's us. In other words, we follow those poskim that disagree, and we hold that it's actual isser. I'm not saying it can never be used as a tzir. I mean, if a shayla comes up, you ask a rav. I'm saying if you think b'chlalis, that's how we approach it. And again, when it comes to the kelim, there's actually a different angle that you have to look at, because b'chlal there's a rule of stam kelim made of b'nei yoyman. So it means if something was cooked in ein b'nei yoyman keli, so it's mutar b'di'evet. And purchasing something that was cooked in ein b'nei yoyman keli is called b'di'evet. So in other words, you're allowed to purchase something that was cooked in ein b'nei yoyman keli, and there's a klal of stam kelim made of b'nei yoyman. So that's a different angle to the shaila. And again, I'm not going to go so far into the Indian. I just want to touch on some of the basic ideas. I mean, there's still a few other topics that I wanted to get to. The truth is, I wanted to explain the difference about cheese. But if I do that, then we're going to probably run out of time. I explain it properly, at least. I'll say it briefly without explaining it, I guess. There is a svara, and it's brought in the Ramah from places, that if you have cheese, and cheese is its own there, has to be Gvinas Yisrael, okay? But let's say that Mashgiach came for the Gvina when they were making the Gvina, but he missed when they were milking it. In other words, it wasn't Chalav Yisrael. It was Gvinas Yisrael, but it wasn't Chalav Yisrael. So there's a svara that since you're not buying it as milk, it's not coming to you as milk, so it's not in the gzeira of Chalav Akkum. So Chalav Akkum was a loy plug. And even if it wasn't a loy plug, it at least applied in a chash racha that everybody knew, right? But when you're buying Gvina, so the gzeira on Gvina, the Iker gzeira was of the Hamada. But that you had a mashgiach b'shas Hamada, right? So your only chash in the Gvina now is the chalav tamei that may have been mixed into the milk. Now we have a cloud that chalav tamei is not nikva, can turn into cheese. So therefore, now the guy is not going to be motivated to add chalav tamei if he plans on making cheese, because it's just going to end up being like extra watery or whatever it is. And so there is an argument to be made that since it's not coming to you as milk, right? So it doesn't have the gezerah, the loy plug aspect of chalav akum, that even if there's no reason to suspect that the chalav tamei, you still have to have a mashgiach. That's if you're buying milk. So that's b'chlal the gezerah of chalav akum. But if you're buying cheese, so that's the gezerah of gvinas akum, but that you took care of because you had a mashgiach b'shasta hamada. So there's a smart to say that the chalav tamei chash is just like a regular non-kosher ingredient that might be in any product. That since in this case, let me finish sharing this part. That since in this case there's no logic to suspect that there might be chalav tamei. So therefore, you could treat it like any other non-kosher ingredient that might be in a product. That in such a case, you don't have to worry about it. Okay, and you could be saying on this svara. It depends on the situation. If you're making it into that if you didn't make it into the cheese yet, so then you could be saying on it perhaps a maruba only, which means I guess you would have to prepay or you would have to have some sort of a binding agreement. If it was already made into cheese, it's actually more mako. So there actually is a svara, in svara at least, there is a shita. I shouldn't just say in svara, there is a shita that the Maacholei can say that the whole issue of chalav akum, notwithstanding the whole Varda Ramosha, the regular issue of chalav akum is much more kal in gvina. I mean, it has to have a mashgiach, it has to have a hechsher, right? And by the way, why on cheese never says gvinas Yisrael, right? On milk, it's only going to be chalav Yisrael. It says chalav Yisrael, but in cheese, it never says gvinas Yisrael. Why? Pashut, because the same way when you buy meat, so it doesn't have to say basar shchuta. If there's a hechsher, it's obviously shchuta, right? Maybe glat, because glat is a hither. So they want to tell you this meat is glat, maybe this meat isn't glat, right? But basar shchuta is never going to say, right? So if for gvina to be kosher, it has to have a yid b'shasta amad. Otherwise, it's not kosher. It's not gvinas Yisrael. So once they put a hechsher, and since there's no shita that holds that nowadays or in America or from a company you don't have to have, because Vino was clearly a light plug, and there's no such thing that there's a mirsas that they're not allowed to use. That whole svara is not applicable to cheese, right? So in Mela, for cheese to be kosher, there was a mashgiach there. That's it. So there's no like two levels. So it's never going to say by milk where does the chalav stan and is the real chalav Yisrael, right? So then you have to tell you which is which. So if it's not, if they want to tell you that it's going to be the real chalav Yisrael, so they have to write those words chalav Yisrael. That's just to understand why. But there is room, I guess, by some people, if they accept that whole word b'teres chumra, that they can be makel. That they're makbid on chalav Yisrael on milk. When it comes to cheeses, so OUD cheese, meaning again that if it's gvinas Yisrael, but it was made out of cholov stam milk, because there's more makom to be makel with the cheese versus also it's not a strange thing, and it's obviously not for us. We treat the OUD, I was saying, so we treat the cholov stam milk as not kosher, and therefore we're not really samich on this svara. We're samich on this svara that the Ramah brings, but in special situations, not to go to the store and buy it, right? But those that so it's like a tziruf kind. You have the svara of cholov stam, which they hold me'ikar adin is something to rely on. Plus the svara of the Ramah that the Ramah brings down, they get the cheese, so there could be no makel with the cheese. But this svara doesn't apply to ice cream, because ice cream is not, the thickness of the cream is not mikoyach the nature of like the cheese, that it's thicker, and therefore the cholov tamei, won't turn into cheese. Cholov tamei could turn into ice cream. Ice cream is just frozen milk, so therefore it doesn't have that. I remember as a kid, there was like a certain family that didn't buy cholov tamei, they were more making ice cream, but clearly that's a mistake. Because the ice cream doesn't have that same added factor or whatever it is of leniency with regard to the cholov aspect that hard cheese would have. Okay, I guess we're running low on time. Let me skip the chaysamais part. We were supposed to speak about, and go, I guess, something that's more practical. But they're both practical. There's a din that when you order fruits from a non-kosher store, so because it's in the care of a guy, so you can't just leave something in the care of a guy. There's a chashash lafa that he's going to exchange it. Now, when exactly does that chash exist is really meikar then only if he's nene b'chalipin, only if he's going to benefit something. So that means if, let's say, if the non-kosher food would be cheaper, so you'd rather exchange and get the higher quality kosher food and exchange it with the cheaper inferior quality non-kosher. It has to be a situation where he's nene b'chalipin for the din to apply. But in such a situation, so you would require certain types of foods. Chavis requires two chaysames, champag requires only one. So let's say pizza would only need one, meat or fish would need two. That's l'chatchila, b'diavad, one chaysam is good enough. And in certain situations, b'diavad, even if it was sent without a chaysam, you have to ask a shayla, but certain situations, it could be mutter even without any chaysam b'diavad. That's in terms of halacha l'maisa. I really wanted to explain the background like we usually do, but we're out of time now. But what's important to remember is a similar idea of when a housekeeper, cleaning lady, whatever it is left in the house. So there's obviously a lot of chashashes that she could trafe up the kitchen. Okay, she could trafe up the kitchen in many ways. First of all, when she's washing the dishes, she could wash, let's say, the fleishige dishes with a milchige sponge and hot water, which could potentially trafe up the dish. In cooking, she could, even if she's cooking only for herself, she could by mistake cook milchigs in a fleishige pot, which would make it basar. But even if she's cooking something parav, she could potentially make it bishul akkum, which, as we mentioned the other shear, still requires you to have to kasher the keli. So there's a lot of concern that she could potentially trade stuff, and even again, even for her own benefit, to be able to, not that to hurt you or something like that, just for her own benefit. So there is definitely concern of just leaving. It's very problematic. Now, a lot of people are makel to themselves, and I would assume that the reason is because they say, listen, I told her what to do. I gave her instructions. And I told her, for me, I'm kosher, whatever it is, this is the way it has to be. And I trust her. I trust her with my jewelry. I trust her with my kids. So I shouldn't trust her. She's going to wash the fleishige dish with the milchige sponge, right? But that's why people are more headed to themselves. They think, why can't I? Of course I could trust. I trust a much more valuable thing. But the answer is that, first of all, even if there wouldn't be any svara to be machalik, that's irrelevant. That's your business. You want to trust a cleaning lady with your jewelry, it's tavi alecha bracha. But Chachamim said you can't trust the guy with your pot, right? And if you give your pot to the guy to fix and he holds it for a day, it's a problem, right? Or if the guy's in your house and no one's there and no one's watching, it's a problem. So, and if you want to be Mosef a svara, there's an obvious svara to be machalik, because over there she understands that she was raised properly and she's a reasonable person, so she knows that you worked hard for your money and you bought the piece of jewelry, and this is stealing. So even according to her values, stealing is a bad thing. She knows that it's, so if she cares about you or she has her own morals, she's not going to do it, right? This is ridiculous to her, right? If when you turn around, she's laughing about it to her friends, right? This is ridiculous. You have two separate sinks, you don't mix milk and meat. Elowat, she works for you, so she's a little menschlich, she's not gonna tell you you're crazy. So she'll do what you say, and she might even try to keep, when it's okay, when it's not hard for her, she might even try to keep it. But if it's somewhat inconvenient, even a little bit, right? So she'll, let's say she can't find a fleshige sponge. So she'll use the milk. If it's there, okay, so fine, she'll use it. You asked her to use it. Why shouldn't she do the other one? No. But let's say she can't find the fleshige. Well, she'll use the milk. What's she doing wrong? She's still washing your dishes. It's going to come out just as clean. And you didn't know. And if you don't know, it doesn't hurt you. Either you could agree with that svara, you don't have to agree. Upon him, it's a clear halacha that the Akkum said that it's a problem if it's left in the care of a guy. So what you need to do in order to avoid this issue is there's, I guess, two klolistic oifanim how you can get around this problem. So one is, it's called the Yosef Nichnas approach, okay, which means it's kind of hashgacha. So usually if you're home, so you watch her, you make sure that everything she's doing is correct. And even if you're not mamish home the whole time, so if you tell her exactly in instructions, you tell her you're not allowed to cook anything. The fleshige stuff has to be washed on this side with the red sponge, the milchige stuff on that side with the blue sponge, right? And you tell her that if she doesn't keep to these rules, she can't work for you. You keep kosher. If she's not able to keep to this, then she can't work for you. In other words, you threaten that you're going to fire her if she doesn't keep to the rules. So if you have those, and she's afraid of getting caught. How is she afraid of getting caught if you're not home the whole time? So which means you come in and out at unpredictable intervals. So you don't tell her exactly when you're going to come. So Amol, you're out for a half. You go to Kingston, you're out for a little bit. You come back, she doesn't know. Could be you're going to a neighbor for 5 minutes. So since she's not comfortable, she doesn't know when you come back. And you threatened her that if she doesn't keep to those guidelines that you gave her, she's not going to work for you. So then she's afraid of going against your instructions. And then there's an assumption that you didn't go against your instructions. And that's one mouth. Now, if you both work, your husband and wife work, and no one's home, you're leaving the cleaning lady there, that becomes a little more tricky how to implement such an approach. It could be done if you have neighbors or relatives that could come in at unpredictable times. It won't help if someone's going to come in every day in their lunchtime, because he's going to realize only from 12 to 1 they come in. It has to be unpredictable. And then that would work. So that's one mahal. If that totally, so in order for that to work, basically 3 conditions. Number one, she has to know the dinei Yisrael. You have to instruct her the instructions, what she is and what she's not allowed to do, and that would be leishik milchik, no cooking at all, etc. Then there would have to be that she's threatened that if she doesn't keep it, she knows the consequences. And third is that there's some sort of a fear of getting caught, which that is used by some sort of Yosef Nichnas kind of arrangement. That could also be a camera, which again, you don't have to be watching the whole time, but that once in a while you check in on the camera. The other approach when a Yosef Nichnas is not feasible would basically be you would have to set up an arrangement in such a oifen that you take away her whole motive or her opportunity from actually trading anything up. So, for example, the chashash hachlafa that she might, let's say, use your food and exchange it with something non-kosher. So if you give her permission to eat your open food, so then you took away any motive of chashash hachlafa. She doesn't need to fill up your milk with the tray for milk now. You gave her permission to drink up the milk. So if she drank it up, there's nothing wrong, right? So that you took it, and anything that's sealed is sealed, right? And as a chaysa. Anything that's open, you give her permission. And so that takes care of the chashash hachlafa. The dishes, the easiest is you just make sure that she has no motivation to wash the fleshige on the milchige side. In other words, make sure that the fleshige side has a good sponge and the milchige side has a good sponge. And they have to be equally comfortable sinks, which means if the milchige sink is a little loch in the corner, then you have to say that, in other words, not leave any milchige dishes for her to wash, because then she has clear motivation of washing the milchige dishes in the fleshige sinks. It would have to be a situation where there's zero motivation for her to wash, to mix that up. That would take care of that. And the big one would be, how do you prevent her from cooking something, right? So if you provide her with a lunch that she likes, that would take away some of the motivation, but not always, not every day you can have the peanut butter sandwich. Some days you want she might be in the mood of eggs. She might be in the mood of cooking something for herself. So you basically have to take away her opportunity from doing that. So one way could be, it depends on the situation that you have. You just try to figure out the easiest way for you to do that. So let's say you would have, let's say the stove and the microwave is controlled by a circuit that's not connected, let's say, to the refrigerator. So before you leave to work, you could close that circuit. In other words, the circuit breaker for the stove and the microwave, and then she's not gonna be able to use that because that's hidden under a picture somewhere, whatever it is, right? If that's not feasible because that's somewhere in the basement and you can't access it, or because that connected also to the fridge, so maybe you can't turn it off or whatever it is. So you have to figure out some other way. For the grates, you could hide, let's say you could hide the grates so she can't put any pots down on it. What would it help with the oven? I think the only thing that would actually really work is you create some sort of a chaisam. So you have to tape it closed, put your signature on it. It would have to be a type of tape that when you take it off, the tape breaks. So then you have a chaisam on the oven itself. Then you can put the grates into the oven, put a chaisam around the oven. There's a piece of tape and a signature. And then you know that she's not gonna try to cook anything in the oven. You would have to create one of those types of situations, and absent one of those, then there's actually a real shiloh with all your pots in your house. I don't want to frighten everybody too much, but it's a serious issue. Okay, so it's important. And again, people are makel for themselves, most probably because of the svar that we said before. But it's important for everybody to be aware that you have to implement sub. You could mix and match some of the aspects of the different rifanim, right? But you have to create some sort of a safeguard for this thing.